Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I'll start with just a couple of announcements. First of all, remember career training. We have a lot of people who are not in the healthcare business right now saying, after watching all of this mess going on for so long, I think I'd like to jump in and do my part to make it better. And we're also hearing from a lot of you who are already in the healthcare business saying, I've had about all of this system I can take and I want to help people and do better, but I want to do it outside the system. So my email address is pampopper@msn.com if you want to take a look at the types of things that we can train you to do. Another thing, we have some upcoming classes that I think are interesting. Food allergies is next week, and a lot of misunderstandings about this on both sides, both in traditional and in alternative medicine. The research boot camp is this Saturday. I teach a very long course called Research and Writing. It involves a lot of projects and research and goes on for 8 months, and it's for people who really want to be good at this. And this might inspire you to do that. But if you're looking for the short version, like what can you teach me in 2.5 hours or so that would allow me to just be more savvy when I'm looking at studies or I'm trying to look something up and figure it out, that's what we're going to do on Saturday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And I'm looking forward to I love teaching this because we teach it to members all the time, how to look at information and make sense out of it so that you're not being misled by people, anybody for that matter. And then the HIV Aids boot camp is Friday, Saturday, March 5th and 6th. It's Friday evening, all evening, and then Saturday afternoon, all afternoon. Pretty good overview of that, and has some timeliness right now because there's some of the same characters involved in that whole debacle that we're seeing right now. And then Cancer 201, I mentioned it's the course that examines alternative treatments for cancer. And I originally was going to teach it in a short course, like 4-class series. And it just became apparent that what was needed was a vetted collection of videos and slide sets that dealt with all kinds of alternative treatments. And I don't know, I might be creating these videos till the end of my life, but the ones we've scheduled, the next two are HOXI and DMSO. So we're going to do Rife Technology this week, by the way, and then HOXI and DMSO after that. So every couple weeks, Wednesday at noon Eastern time, I schedule these classes. And if you're part of our Cancer Concierge program, you can join in the discussion. We talk about the topic, and then we just talk about cancer and cancer treatment in general. And if you've signed up for the Cancer 201 course, until I'm finished with it, you'll get an email from us every couple weeks telling you that we have another workshop scheduled, and I'm not at risk of running out of topics anytime soon. There are just so many to review. All right, so pampopper@msn.com is my email address. All right, so today I want to share some excerpts from a recent David Katz column. And just for the record, if you're a new viewer, people say sometimes, I'm surprised that you quote David Katz because he says some things that I know you don't agree with. Well, I'm not looking for people who agree with me on everything. I like people who we can have a discussion about something that we don't agree on and not throw chairs at each other and call each other names and that sort of thing. So I have very good relationships with people who don't agree with me. I don't have good relationships with people who are militant and say that a condition of hanging out with them is that you have to agree with them. So I'm a fan of David Katz. We don't have to agree on everything, but on the big issues, I think we really do. So as I've said before, I think he's been the voice of reason during this entire debacle. And had he been in charge, I've also said this, I wouldn't agree with everything he wants to do, but I'd sure agree with a whole lot more of it than what is going on now. So in a recent column, he mentions that he believes that he and a couple of his family members have COVID, and he reports that the symptoms are mild. And also that in view of that, he respects the virus. And by the way, I think we all do. Nobody's claiming that people don't get sick from viruses all the time, actually. He resents the drama surrounding the virus, which he refers to, he made up a new word, actually, Dramademiology. I kind of think it's a great name for it. He uses this term to describe the media feeding frenzy that continues rather than doing what they should do, which is report unencumbered data. Unencumbered meaning it's not your opinion, you actually check it out. I mean, I'm just longing for the day when curious journalists actually start looking into things and holding government officials accountable again. Dr. Katz says that while mourning the loss of lives due to COVID, and we all should, and I say this all the time too, anybody who dies is a tragedy for somebody. It's somebody's grandfather or mother or best friend or cousin or neighbor or coworker. And it's always sad. And we never want to take anything away from that. But the media has failed to put the numbers in context. And he says, for example, 650,000 people die every year in the United States of heart disease, every single year. And those deaths are premature and tragic, and every bit as tragic as COVID deaths. So why are we taking this all out of context? Why the hysteria about one and not the other? The family members of people who die of heart disease are just as devastated. So why don't we have a national moment of silence every single year to honor these preventable deaths? Well, a list of conditions, that's not the only one. We could have a moment of silence for the people who die of cancer and diabetes and other diseases that are preventable. We could do that too. Well, chronic conditions aren't contagious. That might be one difference that somebody points out, and that's true. But we don't mourn losses, according to Dr. Katz, and I agree with this, because of the cause of the loss. We mourn deaths due to the consequences, the pain of the loss. And deaths from chronic conditions cause the same type of pain and agony for family members and friends who suffer the loss as COVID deaths. And so why the difference in the approach? About 1,800 people die of heart disease in the United States every day. And so a fair question to ask is, first of all, why aren't we, every day having the count? Another person died of heart disease, a doctor died of heart disease, an adolescent died of heart disease. In the nursing homes, more people die. Why aren't we doing that? But even more, why are we waxing sanctimonious, he says, about the need to prevent every death, about every death is a tragedy, while neglecting the 1,800 deaths a day from heart disease, let alone cancer and diabetes and other chronic degenerative conditions. He says this is more than mere inconsistency, it borders on hypocrisy. And he adds, and I think this is true, even the COVID deaths are related to chronic degenerative disease. When COVID kills people other than the elderly, it's generally an overweight person or a diabetic person or a person with heart disease, hypertension, obesity. These are the types of people who are at the highest risk of dying of COVID. So, this issue of context, why are we taking some things so out of context and totally neglecting everything else? So we could, for instance, just report that 3 million people died last year in the United States, not put it into context and infer that the world's coming to an end. The context that the population turns over at approximately that level every year completely transforms our interpretation. And for COVID, the transformation is not complete, but it's considerable. Even before COVID, according to Dr. Katz, mortality was rising and life expectancy declining in the United States, principally due to the opioid crisis. There's evidence that the pandemic has revived and amplified that crisis. So is the surplus in total mortality due to SARS-CoV-2 infection, to pandemic exacerbation of our antecedent crises, to both, or something else? Who knows in the data compilation? We don't know, and we won't know for a while. And in fact, it's increasingly looking like there isn't any excess mortality when you start plotting it on a graph. As we wait, the safest supposition is both the direct consequences of infection and the indirect consequences of policy missteps are contributing. A pandemic post-mortem, Dr. Katz writes, will one day reveal that drama and distortion fan the flames of discord and contagion alike. For now, we can better traverse what remains of the pandemic if we respect the virus, the science, and one another, while rejecting unneeded additions of distortion and drama. So I've obviously inserted some of my own commentary in here using Dr. Katz's excellent article as a basis. But I think he has a really great point that we should pay more attention to. If we're going to get hysterical about epidemics, what about the epidemic of heart disease? What about the epidemic of cancer? What about the epidemic of diabetes and obesity and autoimmune diseases and all of the other things that prematurely kill Americans and shorten their lifespan every day? Why don't we pay attention to that? And I think that's a fair question to ask. And we'll continue the discussion about it. I also think that his stance about learning to respect one another and not be so quick to just vilify people who have a different opinion from one another is very, very important. So that's all for today. As usual, pass this on to others who you think might enjoy watching it and learning more about these issues, and I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.